3 minutes ago, Representative Hank Johnson did something that drained every ounce of color from Attorney General Pam Bondi's face. Standing in that packed House committee hearing room with cameras broadcasting to millions of viewers worldwide, he asked her to do something she absolutely could not do: turn around. Look directly at the Epstein survivors sitting in the gallery behind her and apologize to them. Those women were sitting right there, close enough to hear every word, close enough to see Bondi's face. Women whose identities had been deliberately exposed by the Department of Justice. Women whose names, home addresses, and phone numbers had been published in unsanitized documents for anyone to access. Women whose lives had been shattered all over again by the agency that was supposed to protect them. And Bondi stood there in the center of that hearing room, visibly sweating, with absolutely nowhere to run. What happened in those 3 minutes exposes something far bigger than one confrontation. It reveals how 500 Department of Justice attorneys were deployed not to pursue justice for victims, but to shield Donald Trump from accountability. It shows how victim protection was deliberately sacrificed to protect political power. And it captures the exact moment when Bondi had to make a choice between apologizing to survivors and protecting the president. She chose Trump, and Johnson made sure the entire world witnessed that choice in real time. The hearing room at 2:15 p.m. was packed. Journalists crammed into every seat, camera crews positioned for optimal angles, committee members shuffling papers, but something was different today. In the gallery seats directly behind the committee table, a group of women sat in complete silence, their faces tight with controlled emotion, their eyes filled with a mixture of rage and grief that only survivors can truly understand. They weren't moving, they were barely breathing, they were just watching. Epstein survivors, the ones who survived years of abuse and somehow made it out alive. The ones who had been promised protection by the federal government, promised anonymity, promised that their identities would be safeguarded as they sought justice. And they were here because the Department of Justice had broken every single one of those promises. Their names had been published in official documents, their addresses revealed to anyone with internet access, their phone numbers made available. Everything that was supposed to be protected under federal law had been exposed to the public. And now they sat in that gallery, staring directly at the woman responsible for that betrayal, Pam Bondi, Attorney General of the United States of America. Bondi had walked into that hearing room with her trademark confidence, the suit flawless and tailored, the hair perfectly styled for the cameras. 18 years as a career prosecutor, 8 years as Florida's Attorney General, one of the largest states in the nation, and now the top law enforcement position in the entire country. She knows how to handle hostile questioning. She's spent her career dodging difficult questions. She's a professional. But she wasn't prepared for what Hank Johnson was about to do, and she wasn't prepared for those women sitting behind her, watching her every move. The first hour of testimony proceeded exactly as these hearings always do. Republican members lobbed Bondi carefully prepared friendly questions that allowed her to deliver talking points. She answered them smoothly and professionally, even managing to smile and share the occasional joke with committee members she was comfortable with. She performed warmth and accessibility like the seasoned professional she is. Then it was Hank Johnson's turn to question her. Representative Hank Johnson from Georgia, calm, methodical, measured in every word he chooses. He doesn't waste language or inflate rhetoric. He doesn't manufacture drama for the cameras. He simply asks direct questions and waits patiently for direct answers. But today Johnson was carrying something explosive, evidence that would blow apart Bondi's entire testimony. And he had every intention of detonating it right in front of her face. Johnson leaned forward into his microphone. His voice was steady and clear. Madame Attorney General, according to multiple reports, at one point approximately 1,000 personnel were deployed specifically to scrub Donald Trump's name from the Epstein files. Are those reports accurate? Bondi immediately shifted into defense mode. His name appears numerous times in the documents. Johnson cut her off cleanly. I asked a very simple question. Were 1,000 people deployed? Yes or no? Bondi shifted uncomfortably. There were over 500 attorneys and reviewers. I cannot provide an exact number. Johnson repeated the number slowly. 500 Department of Justice attorneys deployed to review the Epstein files, to apply appropriate redactions to protect victim identities. 500 people, correct? If you would allow me to finish, you've answered my question. 500 people. Moving on. Bondi stopped. You could see her trying to figure out where Johnson was going, but she couldn't see it yet. The trap was still being built. Madame Bondi, Johnson continued. You served 8 years as Florida's Attorney General, the third largest state. That experience must have provided exceptional preparation for your current role, wouldn't you say? Bondi visibly relaxed. This sounded like a compliment. Not just that. I was a career prosecutor for 18 years before that. 18 years. Handling serious criminal cases, drug cases, correct? Bondi straightened. Confidence building. I handled murder cases, death penalty cases, domestic violence, sexual assault. Johnson said it flat. Child sexual abuse cases, correct? Bondi hesitated. I've addressed this before. I worked across many types of cases. Short answer. You are an experienced prosecutor with extensive experience in sexual assault cases, correct? We've already established that. Johnson leaned forward. So when prosecuting sexual assault cases, you are acutely aware of how critical it is to protect victim identities, correct? Bondi stiffened. I've addressed this multiple times. I'm asking a simple question. Protecting sexual assault survivors' identities is vital. Isn't that correct? As I've stated, the protection of all victims. Are you going to answer or continue talking over me? The room tightened. Bondi's face flushed red. Johnson's voice hadn't risen, but it had sharpened. Look, Johnson continued, you're doing some kind of Jekyll and Hyde routine up here. I'm simply asking you to answer my questions directly. Bondi's jaw dropped. Jekyll and Hyde, could you explain what you mean? A cold smile crossed Johnson's face. It means you are perfectly pleasant to Republicans and an absolute monster to Democrats asking legitimate questions. Complete silence. Journalists stopped writing. Cameras locked onto Bondi's face. And the survivors in the back weren't moving. They were watching every second. Johnson didn't stop, because now it was time to detonate. Madame Bondi, he said, we have Epstein victim survivors in this room today. Representative Jayapal asked you earlier. As a gesture of basic human decency, would you turn around, look directly at those women and apologize for having their identities exposed? The room erupted. People couldn't process it. Journalists lurched forward. Cameras swung frantically, because Johnson had just done something unprecedented. He was asking the Attorney General to turn around and apologize to Epstein survivors, right there, right then, to their faces, on camera. How many lives have been derailed? Johnson's voice was rising, genuine anger breaking through, because your department was either too incompetent to do its job, or deliberately trying to intimidate these women. Which was it? The gentleman's time has expired. The chair tried to intervene. Which was it? Johnson was nearly shouting. Incompetence or deliberate intent. Bondi froze. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. Her attorneys whispered frantically. But Bondi wasn't listening, because Johnson's question hung in the air like a guillotine blade, and everyone was waiting to see if it would drop. Johnson wasn't finished. He knew something nobody else knew yet, and now it was time to reveal it. Madame Bondi, you said it yourself. Over 500 attorneys. What exactly did you deploy them to review? Bondi tried to recompose. We reviewed all relevant documents and applied appropriate redactions. Appropriate. Johnson raised his eyebrows. 500 attorneys. The most powerful law enforcement apparatus on earth. And you couldn't protect victims' identities. He let that sit. You had 500 attorneys. And yet their names, addresses, phone numbers, were in those documents for anyone to find. How does that happen? It was a complex process. 500 attorneys. Johnson's voice cracked the room open. Let me give you context. After September 11th, the FBI deployed over 7,000 agents. Oklahoma City bombing, over 900. The Unabomber, hundreds of agents for years. He paused. And for the largest child sexual abuse network in American history, you deployed 500 attorneys and couldn't protect a single victim? Silence. Heavy. Crushing. Because Johnson was right. 7,000 agents for terrorism. 500 for child sexual abuse. The priorities were crystal clear. Bondi tried desperately to respond. Quality over quantity. Quality. Johnson's disbelief was palpable. You didn't even read the files. Madame Attorney General, remember when Representative Goldman asked you, did you read the full documents? And you said no. You only read summaries. So what exactly were your 500 people investigating? And what did they find? We were unable to locate a client list. Stop. Johnson raised one finger. You're saying you couldn't find a client list. You are not saying there were no clients. You are not saying there is no list. You're saying maybe there's no organized list. But the clients themselves, they exist. Don't they, Madame Attorney General? The names exist. The records exist. Bondi could not answer. This wasn't a rhetorical question designed for dramatic effect. This was a real question. And Johnson was waiting for a real answer. Various names have been referenced. Stop. Johnson leaned back slowly in his chair. Various names have been referenced. That is a significant admission. Madame Attorney General, who are those names? How many names are we talking about? What categories are we talking about? I cannot get into that. Johnson laughed, but it wasn't a laugh of amusement. It was the laugh of someone staring at pure breathtaking disbelief at what they're witnessing. Same thing every single time. There are names, but you can't say them. There's no list, but there are names. You conducted a comprehensive review but didn't actually read the files. You had 500 attorneys, but found nothing conclusive. Madame Bondi, are you running the Department of Justice, or are you running a cover-up operation? And then Johnson made his final move. He turned to face the room. He looked directly at the women sitting in the back gallery, and then he turned back to Bondi. Madame Bondi, he said, his voice quiet now, but carrying a coldness that could freeze bone. Those women are here right now. They are sitting behind you. Their identities were exposed. Their lives were destroyed. Because your department was either negligent or deliberately targeted them. I don't know which, but here is what I do know. He paused. Every single person in that room held their breath. You are going to turn around. You are going to look at those women, and you are going to apologize, because you owe them that. You've spent 18 years telling us you protected victims. So where is that protection now? Where is that justice now? Bondi opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Her attorneys were in full panic mode, frantically whispering and passing notes. The committee chair was hammering his gavel repeatedly. Time has expired. Time has expired. He kept shouting. But Johnson wasn't moving. He sat there watching Bondi, waiting, and Bondi just stood there. She did not turn around. She did not look at those women. She did not apologize, because she couldn't. Because apologizing would mean admitting guilt, and she could not admit guilt, because she was protecting Trump, and protecting Trump meant sacrificing those victims. Johnson stood slowly. I yield back, he said quietly, and he sat down. The hearing technically continued. Other representatives asked other questions, but nobody was listening anymore, because everyone was thinking about that moment. The moment Johnson asked Bondi to apologize to those survivors, and the moment Bondi refused, couldn't turn around, couldn't look at them, couldn't say the words. The news spread instantly. Clips hit social media within seconds. Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. News channels cut into their regular programming with breaking news alerts. Political analysts weighed in across every network, and everyone said the same thing. Bondi had been completely destroyed, because Johnson had built the perfect trap. First, he made her comfortable. He praised her experience, the 18 years as a prosecutor, the Florida Attorney General position, the sexual assault cases, the victim protection expertise. He let her relax and feel confident, and then he snapped it shut. If you know so well how to protect victims, why didn't you protect these ones? You had 500 attorneys. How do you fail this catastrophically? Was it incompetence or was it deliberate? And then the final devastating blow. Turn around. Look at them. Apologize. And Bondi couldn't do it. She couldn't, because apologizing meant admitting she had sacrificed those victims to protect Donald Trump. And she could never say that out loud. 3 minutes. That's all it took for Johnson to completely dismantle her credibility. 500 attorneys deployed to shield Trump from accountability. Victim identities deliberately exposed to the public. Trump's name appearing numerous times in the documents. And Bondi's absolute refusal to turn around and apologize to the women whose lives her department had destroyed. This is no longer conspiracy theory. This is no longer speculation or partisan accusations. This is documented scandal. entered into the congressional record, broadcast to millions of viewers, captured on camera for history. The Attorney General of the United States refused to apologize to Epstein survivors because protecting Trump was more important than protecting the victims of child sexual abuse. And those women are still sitting there in that gallery, still watching, still waiting for the justice that will never come from this administration, because this system was never built to protect them. It was built to protect the powerful. It was built to shield people like Trump while sacrificing people like those survivors. If this breakdown exposed something you won't see covered in mainstream headlines, share this video. Make sure people understand what actually happened in that hearing room. Make sure they see how Bondi chose Trump over victims. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Because this story is far from over. More revelations are coming. More confrontations are coming. And you need to see every single one of them. Thanks for watching.